Hello. Thank you for attending the video version of the TTUSD radio training. I'm John Brito, Director of Facilities for the district, and I have with me Michael Milico from Sierra Electronics. He is going to start off today's presentation with a description of the radio and how to use it and how to take care of it.
Thank you, John. I'm Michael Milico with Sierra Electronics. We're located in Reno, Nevada, and we've designed and maintain the new radio system for TTUSD that you guys are using. I'd like to go over a couple of things with the radio. This is the radio. It's a Motorola XPR 6550 digital radio, the latest technology. A lot of you have a similar radio. It's the XPR 6350. The only difference is the face of that radio is blank, doesn't have all these buttons and screens. However, you'll be glad to hear that none of these buttons or screens work or do anything. So both radios are the same and operate the same. There's really only 3 buttons on this radio that you need to know about. The first button is this one here, which is your on-off switch. The radio will beep, indicating that the power is on, and then you control the volume with this button, louder or quieter. The button in the middle is the channel button. There are 5 channels on these radios. The first channel is a TMO repeater channel that the TMO group uses and is area-wide. Channels 2, 3, and 4 are local channels, radio to radio, which are used in the individual schools. And John will talk a little more later about which schools use which channels. And then finally, channel 5 is an emergency repeater channel, which will be used in emergency situations. And again, John will talk more about that later. To use the radio, turn it on, wait for the beep, and then this button on the side is your push to talk button. You'll push that radio button in, identify yourself, speak, release the button to listen. Keep in mind, push to talk, one person speaks, everybody hears. So when you push that button and talk, everybody hears you. Next, I'd like to talk a little about charging your radio. Each of you have a charger that came with your radio. And you should put your radio in the charger each night at the end of the day and pick it up again in the morning. There's no harm in leaving the battery in the charger too long. There's a light on your charger, and there's 3 different colored lights you'll see when you're charging your radio. When you first put the radio in, the color is red, which indicates that the charger is charging the battery and the radio. When the battery is 90% charged, the light will flash green. That tells you it's almost ready. And then when it's 100% charged, that flashing green light will turn to a solid green light, which tells you the battery is 100% charged. Again, no harm in, after that point, leaving it in the charger. The only other color you will see occasionally on the charger is a flashing orange light. The battery system and charging system occasionally will decharge the battery to 0 and recharge it back to 100%. This helps the battery last longer. And occasionally the system will do this on its own. So if you see a flashing orange light, it just means that the battery is reconditioning and going bound to 0, back up to 100%, and when it turns green, it will be 100% charged again. Couple of words about care. These radios are heavy-duty, commercial-grade radios. They've been manufactured to military specs. They are, however, not indestructible. So you do need to take care of them, try not to drop them, try to keep them dry. They are water resistant, so if you're out in wet weather or something and they get wet, it's not a problem. However, if it were to fall into some water or become submersed in water, you'd want to quickly get it out of there, dry it as best you can, take the battery off, dry the inside of the battery and the inside of the radio, and then let the air dry it in open position before you put it back together again. The final thing I'd like to mention is radio etiquette. When you use the radio and you're calling someone, you'll push the push to talk button. The first thing you should do is identify yourself so everybody knows who's speaking. And next, you need to identify who you're calling so that everybody knows who you're talking to and that person could recognize that you're trying to reach them and return your call. The only other thing you need to be aware of is always speak in a professional manner when on the airwaves. Not only is it a good thing for the school district because children and students and other faculty members can hear what you're saying on the radio, and we assume that you'd act in a professional manner. However, FCC regulations require this, and if for some reason someone were to use some foul language on the air, it can cause the loss of your license, so we don't want that to happen. So we trust that you'll, as usual, act in a professional manner. That's some basics on the operations of the radio. Now throw it back to John for some explanation and some more details on how these radios specifically relate to TTUSD.
Thanks, Michael. I'd like to start off just by explaining there's a number of benefits to the new radio system over the old one that we used prior to this. One of those is that we don't really have any competition with other users. Pretty much the only people you'll hear are TTUSD users. The other thing is that the communication on these radios stays very clear right up until you lose the signal. So that's a big advantage over the others where the signal would just fade and fade until you had a lot of static and could barely hear. And as to how that will work at your site, you're really going to have to experiment at every site. They're all a little different. So you'll know by talking to people on the site how strong the signal stays in various places, but it should be quite a distance. As far as the expectations that we have of people who all have radios, and there are 140 radios that were purchased by the district, so there are quite a few of them. We want to just make sure that everyone has the radio that was originally signed to them, and that is identified by a 3-digit number on the radio. And if you're in doubt about it, your site should have a listing that shows which radios were assigned to who. You should have your radio with you, it should be turned on, and it should be charged so that if there's an event, we're able to contact you. You should also know how to identify yourself with people who are using communications on site. You're going to just pretty much use your first name. When you're communicating district-wide, we want you to use your first name and also identify the site that you're with so we can keep track of who we're talking to as we get a number of people on an event. Now, regular operations, it's going to be a little different at every site in terms of what channel you use. There are 5 channels. 1 through 5 is how they're numbered, and the first one is will come up. If you have a screen, it will be called TMO. Most of you don't have a screen, so you'll just have to look at the indicator on the side of your radio. Number 1 is traffic for the transportation department. Number 2 is elementary traffic for the most part. Number 3 is middle school and the DO. Number 4 is high school traffic. And number 5 is the emergency channel that everyone will go to when we have an event where we need communication district-wide. So there may be some variations. Different sites have chosen, for instance, North Tahoe has chosen to use channel 3 because they all want to be on the same channel. But for the most part, that's how it should work. Emergency operations is going to be different. Whenever you have an emergency on your site, you're going to want to make sure that you notify everyone on the channel that you typically use that you need to go to channel 5. So everyone at a school site will switch over to channel 5. The site administrator for the site will be charged with making sure that someone communicates with the district office to let them know that there is an event going on. So they will either call the district office or they can use channel 1 on their radio or both to notify the district that there is a problem and that the site has gone to the emergency channel. And that way, as the word spreads, everyone who comes on to channel 5 will be able to hear what's happening. We're not going to use any code signs. We're not going to use any radio jargon. It should all just be plain language so everyone can understand what's going on. The incident commander at a site should identify themselves and give a status of what is going on. And they may have to do that more than once because people will be joining as time goes along, and you'll have to update people on what's happening. Communication should be as short and concise as possible. You need to come on with information and say it as quickly as possible and be as clear as possible. And then, for the most part, people will be listening to the communication but not contributing unless there is something specific that they need to notify the group about, or unless they're called on by the incident commander. If the IC asks you to clear the channel, that means all discussion on that channel should cease so that some important conversation can take place between the IC and another party. The sites should designate, and departments should designate, who will do most of the communication for their site or their department during the incident. So we're also going to have a monthly radio check to allow us to make sure that the system is up and running and that people have their radios on. And that's going to be a learning process. We're going to start by having the monthly radio check on Monday mornings on the first Monday of the month. So you'll need to calendar that, and what we'll do is at 10 a.m. the sites or departments will check their own group of people within their site, and we have the list we can send out to let you know who all is within your group. And then you'll log who you contact and who you don't, and it's up to the individual sites or departments to follow up with those people who they don't reach in order to find out, you know, if there's a problem with the radio, or make sure that that contact happens in the future. Then at 10:30, the facilities department will take the responsibility of contacting all of the sites and departments and basically do the same thing. We'll contact one person at each site and department and make sure that we are able to make contact. And that way we're spreading around the work of this, and we can, by the time we reach the end, we'll have contacted every person on their radio and know who's on and who's not. So we also have been working on gathering accessories. Some of the radios, or all of the radios, are sometimes difficult to carry, and we're trying to find accessories that we can make available to staff of different types so that you have some options when it comes to carrying your radio. We're gonna make those available, but we'll need to hear from you what exactly you need, and we're going to have to distribute some information. We didn't have them here, so we'll distribute information on what's available, and you'll contact my assistant Becca, and she can order the accessories that each site needs. In the meantime, we want to encourage everyone to use their radios as much as possible. It's really something you'll become more and more comfortable with as you use them, and will make it that much easier if there is some type of an event for you to be able to communicate effectively. And that is all for our training. I appreciate you attending, and if you have any questions, please do communicate with the facilities department. You can contact my assistant Becca again, and we'll get her email up here so that you can see it and know what it is. Thank you for coming.